Today, we welcome to Global Citizenship Education Interview Series, Régis Malet. Régis Malet is a professor of comparative international education at the University of Bordeaux and a senior member of the Academic Institute of France, president of the Francophone Society of Comparative Education, editor of the journal Éducation Comparée for almost 2 decades. Regis has led the Cultures Education Society's Research Center and his Comparative Education SIG for years. He created at the Institute of Education of Bordeaux the Bilingual Master International Education and Training, which is quite unique in France and which, since 2017, has graduated more than 120 students, mainly professionals, from every continent and some 20 countries. Régis Malet has conducted international research projects and reports for a variety of prominent institutions, including European Commission, European Parliament, Confemen, Unesco, and the French Ministry of Education. Régis Malet's work focuses on education policies, the transformations of professions of education, social cohesion issues, and the links between schools, societies, and democracy, often from an international and comparative perspectives. Over the last 10 years, as a leader of relevant international projects, has established a strong and fruitful European and global research network. He has been visiting or associate professor with world-class universities such as UCL, Brussels, Lisbon, UCLA, Santiago, Hanoi, Beijing, and Shanghai universities. He has been active member of 2 UNESCO chairs, Global Citizenship Education, UCLA, and Special Needs, Digital Learning and Education in Paris. So, Regis, it's wonderful to have you here with us at Global Citizenship Education Interview Series. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
So you have such a precious and diverse background, and so I'd like to ask you a straightforward question. And the question is, in your opinion, what is global citizenship education and how would you define a global citizen?
Well, thank you again for your invitation, Emiliano. Well, firstly, to my view, the term global citizenship refers to the need for a universality of educational rights, which have been conquered through hard struggles but remain very fragile and unequally shared around the world. After all, literally, the soil of citizenship is national. It was shaped through stages over the last centuries, from civil citizenship, that is to say, the right to property and security, to political citizenship, the right to vote and to be represented, and finally, the right to claim rights debt, what we call droit créance in French, right to education, right to social protection, right to health care. Those are still very fragile conquests, and by no means they are universal. So to me, first, global citizenship refers to the need for these rights to be shared and not for them to be promoted only throughout the world. So this is more a continuity, a step further more than a rupture that I see in first step. Then by extension, it also refers to global issues shared by all human beings, climate changes, sustainable development, equity in the access to various goods, including educational ones, but also, of course, gender equality, accessibility, especially for the most vulnerable, solidarity with them. These are universal commons to be defended, and they must apply to anyone, to everyone, and not just some happy few. And one shall make these issues common causes from the earliest age in formal education, to my view. My second point on this question is this: to be clear, to my view, global citizenship in education will never grow against the nation states, of course, but with them. Otherwise, it will remain an utopia. Though utopias have their own virtues, I don't think this is our purpose. The nation-state history of citizenship is still very powerful, alive and kicking, we could say. And then, to my view, European citizenship, for instance, as Habermas described it a long time ago, as an additive citizenship, an extension of nation states, not a denial of them, illustrates this quite well. Okay, some will say, that's okay for Europe. I can figure the sense of it. But how we can think of a global citizenship without state? Who says that there can be a citizenship without governance? These are common objections we have to take very seriously for those who see the idea of global citizenship as a farce, as a candid or naive vision of a very conflictual world. To this, we can reply, we do actually have global governance without citizenship, don't we? And the great work of UNESCO in this perspective and its predecessors like the International Bureau of Education has been to raise this challenge as an essential one. Working in education matters, not only with the countries which are close to us, but every country. That is crucial. That's what the International Bureau of Education did actually when they brought together, under the figure of Piaget almost 1 century ago, representatives of liberal democracies and so-called fascist regimes. That was some challenge to do so. And UNESCO has taken up this humanist credo, to my view. Solidarity with others, not only those we feel close, is not candid. It just means that there is a political project at work. In a sense, to go just finish on that, global citizenship education challenges or confronts what I would identify as fatal ideologies for our planet, human and non-human. The capitalism first, which is the disastrous deviation of the liberal philosophy that had promoted the individual through generalized submission to the market, education and culture included. But also authoritarianism of what I have called in one text global nationalism, which is the worst response to the latter and to the first, and which is spreading throughout the world under the spreading notion of illiberal regimes. So this humanistic dimension of global citizenship education meets with its critical purpose there. And yes, this is about knowledge and action. We have to face this evidence somehow, is that knowledge is always a political matter, whatever.
Absolutely. And I want to ask you a follow-up question, which in a way relates to your journey of life as a scholar. And the question is how concepts of global citizenship education are connected to your personal life journey.
A lot, actually. Firstly, because I'm a fairly ordinary, banal illustration of cultural globalization myself, I suppose, and probably at the cost of a certain blindness to many parts of the world, I have to admit. I've been acculturated to different cultural spaces since I was quite young, and no doubt I thought I was global at the time. But my world map was, and probably still is, a very Western one. Europe, America, Americas maybe, very Euro-Atlantic in short. But I am not the only one. We are millions Western global citizens actually like that. My cultural practices, like many, have been marked by Western culture. And this, I'm aware now, was first and foremost the result of economic and cultural policies and even lobbying, cultural lobbying. Just as my children are turned more towards Asia, South Korea, or Japan, for example, for quite the same reasons. Culture as power, whether soft or hard power. So we are the fruits of these policies, and I am indeed one of them. But in the same dimension, I would say that I figured somehow at some stage that elsewhere was out of there, and that there was little merit somehow, adventure in seeking out what we already knew. And the comfort of travel is what tourism seeks to promote, not research. So over the last decade, actually, I've learned to work with other places and other people in Africa, in Asia in particular, and South America. And you learn a lot out of this journey. One figures that behind political regimes, like in China or elsewhere, in Russia, there are people who live, feel, prove, educate, and are educated. That's what I say now of to people who are surprised to see me working with, for instance, Chinese universities. Well, for instance, as some colleagues of mine made me aware of this in the past, when I was myself surprised of this. That's precisely what I learned out of the work of notably the International Bureau of Education, which since its creation a century ago, in the interwar period, had worked to develop cooperation in education and science between countries that were politically so far apart. So the same today, I believe, and we need to learn and to lean on education and research to promote intercultural dialogue and the production of commons. This is where the hope of peace lies, actually, diplomacy and education and culture. Trading is not enough to create intercultural dialogue, what capitalism stands for. And yes, of course, it is some challenge and some faith. Learning languages, cooperate, developing students or teachers' mobility and encounters are not guarantees of cooperation or dialogue, that's for sure. But without languages, without mobility, without the effort to go to the encounter of the others, well, and not for happy few only, well, no chance to find a way. So for me, these are essential democratic stakes, actually.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'd like you to expand on these significant thoughts. Particularly, I'd like to ask you to elaborate on the significant work that you are engaged in as a professor in education at the University of Bordeaux. And I hope my French pronunciation is acceptable.
It is.
And
it's very good.
In particular, the Laboratoire Culturel Education and Société, LACES. That's a very interesting point I'd like to discuss with you today, and I'm sure it's of interest to our audience.
Yes, thank you. Well, for quite a long time now, I have been very active in Bordeaux and beyond in promoting comparative education and international mobility in line with what I previously said. In terms of an administration of research and training, for almost 2 decades now, I was in charge of international relations and mobility in the 2 faculties or Institute of Education where I served, the University of Lille, north of France, you may know, and the University of Bordeaux, southwest of France. I also lead for some time a French educational research center, quite important, the LACES, you mentioned it, which places at the heart of its agenda the study of educational professions in the broadest sense, broadest meaning of it. It is very international itself, even though it's based in Bordeaux. Firstly, because it relies on a number of international partnerships and projects, and also because we recruit doctoral students from every continent. This is also true for my own doctoral students at the time.
Right.
And of course, within this framework, I have worked with my colleagues to lead international projects and research in education, languages, and cultures. And for example, I recently coordinated a summer school on global citizenship education in Beijing, the capital normal university. But you give me the opportunity by mentioning Bordeaux to emphasize the importance even for our discussion of the interdisciplinary and bilingual international education and training master's degree we created 7 years ago in Bordeaux, the University of Bordeaux Institute of Education, which supports students and professionals in education in their international mobility pathways. Today, the master has graduated, you mentioned it, more than 120 students over the past 6 years, represented more than 20 nationalities, and it's supported by partnerships, strong partnerships with the USSR, but also with China, for instance.
Right.
And I think it's a good illustration of our ambition as teachers, researchers, and citizens somehow.
Absolutely. And I believe this ties with my next question, and the question is, if you could share some insights into your forthcoming projects and recent publications.
Yeah, with pleasure. In the recent period, along with many articles or books, I have led several funded research projects that have resulted in reports in the last 3 years. Those projects illustrate my preoccupation of associating not only academics but also experts, practitioners, students of different backgrounds, nationalities, of course, projects and research, which have also touched associations, media, mediation organization, what we call société savante. Unfortunately, I'm away from office, so I cannot show you these. But one of these projects was for the National Council for the Evaluation of Educational Systems, the French National Council, which was a report carried out with several members, and which led to an international conference on teachers' professional development. And we made different various reports out of it, with a very, very important echo locally and probably internationally. Another one was something I'm quite attached to, a European Parliament report, which was commissioned by the Culture and Education Committee to me, and was dealing to a very important topic to not only to my mind, to my heart, I would say, which is the roots for European education.
Interesting.
And to try to put some critical perspectives on the challenges ahead in various dimensions of this development, including teacher education, digital education, citizenship education, and so on. Another one, that was 2 years ago. Another one, quite recent, was for the Confemen. Maybe you know this conference of Francophone countries, which was a report commissioned for the comparison of the PASEC studies. This is a statistic of education on French-speaking countries, and this was very focused on teacher training and student performances in sub-Saharan African countries. So that report is not published yet, but it is closed, and that was a very interesting project. I led with colleagues from various countries of Africa. And last but not least, I am currently part of 2 projects led by UNESCO Bureau of in Asia Pacific, for which I was in Thailand and in Vietnam these weeks, which intends to develop and to implement within a consortium of 10 countries, including 4 countries beneficiaries, a framework on teacher competencies and standards in Asia Pacific countries. I am in charge myself of conceiving and mapping and to discuss developments of teacher education in Europe and France, most specifically. A most interesting experience, which gives to think, and again with various profiles of people, of categories of people, of professions too. Then we worked on another very promising program on global citizenship education, actually, in various educational settings with local stakeholders in schools and with a whole school perspective, including teachers' practices, but also school leadership, curriculum conception and assessment. So this is a quite important project which starts on.
Interesting.
So France, Europe, Asia, Africa, I try to work in diverse arenas and always in connection with research and training, concrete issues for the academic world, of course, and my students, my PhD, but also for society, local authorities, and in connection with the international organization with some distance, but still, well, I think we're on time planning this move sometime between the academy and the international organizations.
Absolutely, and very interesting. And I believe we are heading towards the end of this very interesting conversation. So here, a core question: could you provide, based on the all important points that you share with our audience here, Global Citizenship Education Interview Series, could you provide the definition of global citizenship education using 3 keywords, and then explain why you chose these 3 keywords. I know this is a challenging one, but very interesting at the same time.
It is indeed. The first 3, okay. The first term I would, maybe I will repeat myself, but you'll tell me. Accessibility is, to me, a cardinal value and horizon of expectations to which we have to work, and I started with that, and I like to finish with that. One cannot succeed in education without being concerned about and without working through civic commitment and production of knowledge for universal access to education for all girls, boys, vulnerable people, minorities, placing countries and individuals in a situation of competition, of unfair competition, cannot be an answer to anything. And being top of the class is not the point, actually. So this is the first point, accessibility, or maybe universal accessibility. The second one would be local, because there cannot be global. There can be no global citizenship education without contextual, contingent considerations in, concrete educational settings of what this means for teachers and students. And it's always here and now that things happen for those hink and hook. This is always at a place that things happen, never globally, actually.
Right.
And so for me, comparative education is about making this diversity of voices heard and comprehended.
Yeah.
And there are various ways of dealing with global issues at different levels, from policies to practices to educational terrains in the classroom, and then to co-produce, not to say this is global citizenship. That's nonsense.
Right.
The idea is to co-produce resources to renew school curricula, school leadership. See? And then, of course, a last one would be interdependence. Maybe to be less descriptive and more maybe committed, I would say solidarity, which is a kind of interdependence, but with something in it, not only
with a social justice oriented approach.
Solidarity and sustainability. Because in the age we're in the age of what we call Anthropocene, a concept that spreads a lot far and wide in the academic world these days, we need to think about education in terms of sustainable action and sustainable development, for an education that combines knowledge with action, with life.
Absolutely.
Yet the problem is, in many countries, starting with my own, schools do not really prepare students for the world as it is, but rather encourage somehow individual struggles to get out, to get by as best each and everyone can. Whereas the world that is already here calls for a spirit of cooperation, a solidarity, responsible commitment.
Absolutely.
Individual success is part of it. We cannot be happy only for ourselves, So maybe the example, I say maybe with a big maybe, some example come from the East, maybe because I'm on the East at the moment, but at the time when capitalism silently erodes the moral foundations of educating and schooling, and this is really on course, I think we have to take example, at least on educational matters, on things that happen far from us and still resonates to some of our dilemmas, difficulties at the time in our education and schooling.
Absolutely.
So these are the 3 words: accessibility, local, and solidarity.
Absolutely. And I'm very happy that you mentioned local and the spirit of solidarity, spirit of cooperation, all elements that in a way must be included in all discussions on global citizenship education, because
Certainly.
frequently, as you know very well, there is this misunderstanding that because we are talking about global citizenship education, then we forget about local issues. But actually, the local and the global, the so-called global, are absolutely interrelated and necessary to discuss a real and critical and social justice-oriented approach to global citizenship education.
Absolutely. Otherwise, that remains an utopia. We have to work with the local. We have, well, to think the implementation through a close work with the stakeholders, with the, of course, the governments, etc. Otherwise, that remains a kind of UNESCO utopia. That's not sufficient.
Absolutely.
That's not satisfying for anyone.
Absolutely. Well, I want to sincerely thank you for joining this video interview series on global citizenship education. Regis, it's a pleasure to have you here. Wonderful discussion, very interesting, rich of interesting suggestions and perspectives on the futures. And I use futures on purpose of global citizenship education. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Emiliano. Thank you.